Hey friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com, and today I think I have a treat for those of you who really geek out on the history of Italian tarot decks. Now, you know that I've showcased the beautiful Minchiate Solesio-Genova, and I botched the pronunciation. I apologize prior. That Marco just released. So I did a showcasing of that. And then I did a video using those cards in interpretation. And I'll tell you what, I never read Minchiate with such ease before as I just did recently with this deck, because it all fell into place for me. And I really struggled using the Minchiate before. I mean, I've used it, but now this will be the only Minchiate that I'll ever use for interpretation. And I think in any case, it's my favorite Minchiate. And I think when I showcase it in contrast to 6 other Minchiate decks, you'll understand why. Now, I do have 8 Minchiate decks, but one of them was a modern reinterpretation of the Minchiate, and it's just, it doesn't, it's in a different class altogether from these 7 that I'll be showing you. So let me flip the camera and we'll get into it. Now, I hope you all realize how much I love you by virtue of the fact that I had to put 7 Minchiate decks in order to do this presentation. And there's 97 cards in a Minchiate deck, so that was no small task. Now, from the get-go, I'm just going to eliminate 3 other than to show you a few cards. Marco has one, which he called the Minchiate Fiorentine. And then we have this one, which was a $5 deck I got at Five and Below. And I mentioned that it's available at Spencer's Gift, or at least it was a couple of years ago. I don't know what it might cost now, but at Spencers.com, it might be worth your trouble to look for an inexpensive Minchiate deck, which seems to be relatively true. And they might have had a modern artist copy it or something like that. I don't think it's really a true facsimile, but close enough if you want to use it. And then I have 2 that were put out by Scarabeo in their Anima Antiqua series, which are decks that are great for a collector, but not necessarily if someone's going to use them regularly. And then I have 2 beautiful decks, of course, by Meneghello. And they are both, one is called the Etruria, and the other one is Fiorentine, but they're both kind of similar. And then, of course, the Solesio-Genova by Marco. Okay, so the older style, okay, which I have represented by these 3 decks. Here's Marco's. So we have a different presentation. I'll show both of Marco's, okay? So we have a different presentation of what the Fool is. Now, the Fool here, we see a tradition of the Fool being represented with children. Maybe he's a jester, he's got, I don't know, he's got a duck here. The child has a duck and there's a staff, fleur-de-lis, whatever. And here, the tradition of the Fool is represented by a whirligig or balloons or something like that, but also in the presence of children. And we have the inexpensive deck by Spencer's. We see, an abomination of color, but we see the same representation here. And then in the El Signo by Scarabeo and Anima Antiqua, we see that these 3 are based on what appears to be an older design because it looks blocky and it looks like it was less sophisticated and a style that came earlier. So I'm showing those 3. I'm just going to those 3 together. Then I'm going to show their magician card. And let me show Marco's. So we have a tradition of like a fluffy hat with a feather, perhaps. That remained in the later style. So we still see that they look like younger people here. They look like younger people. But by the time we get to the later style, they seem to be more like adults. And then the other card I want to show is the Hunchback. Now it's called the Hermit, but there is a tradition in Italy that the Hermit, I think, was actually referenced as a hunchback, and we see it's maybe not as prominent in the El Signo by Lo Scarabeo and Antiqua, but we kind of, maybe a little bit, but I wouldn't maybe pick it up. But in the cheaper Spencer one, and in, of course, Marco's Minchiate Fiorentine, we do see the indication of a humpback. Of course, we see the hourglass with an arrow, and we see the stag. And let me pull the other one here. So by the time of the later style, we don't necessarily see the hunchback so much, like a slight suggestion, but we have the arrow through the hourglass, time passing. We see an infirmed elder with crutches and a stag. Now, it's important to bear in mind that, traditions in tarot, they take a long time. They hang out for a while. And I just thought I'd mention that. Let me clear the table a little bit so that we'll only have a handful of the Minchiate decks. And I will only show the Triumph cards today, and we'll do the pips tomorrow. Okay, so now bear in mind when I say that I'm only going to be doing the Triumph cards today, I'm referencing the first 40 cards of the deck, because the Minchiate has 97, so it has 21 cards more than the regular tarot deck. Excuse me, I just pulled Pinky out to make sure. 19 cards more, okay? Because I forgot that they eliminated the female pope. So she's not in the first, but anyway, don't worry about it. But I just want to show the Minchiate Etruria, and I'm not sure if I have them in relative order. I know that the folks here at Lo Scarabeo date the style, the tradition, as 1806 to 1807. So that's when they say that this particular deck came to be. So I don't have them probably in the correct order. This one is 1725, the Etruria. So let's switch them out. I try to be as accurate as I can be. Here we have the Il Meneghello, and they say that this is from the 19th century. So we'll leave this here. This one is dated 1725, but like the Vachier and Payen, it may have been one that was printed, continued in being printed as late as relatively modern days. So there we have them. So one of the reasons why I can absolutely say that this is going to be my favorite, it is my favorite, and it will be the one that I will use with the greatest of ease in readings, is because just look at the color. I've established many times doing reviews of Marco's decks. I mean, which one seems more alive? Now, these may be more facsimile decks. That's a possibility. But there's something about a deck that's breathing and living. Just like with the most recent Bordoni deck that he released. The Restoration deck, and I don't mean to take away from Marco's efforts with the facsimile deck, because I'm sure with the colors, he did the same thing as well as he could with a facsimile kind of deck, But there's something about how Marco brings an old deck back to life, and I think we see it. This one, begins to do that, this Il Meneghello deck. The Fiorentine, they have it 19th century. they begin to bring out the yellow. But I don't know. I just get the feeling that Marco, if you're dealing with, older plates, that Marco really makes an effort to present it as it may have looked fresh off the presses, right? And thank goodness these cards are numbered. Now remember, some of the cards are quite different in numbering because, Italy invented the game, and regional play had the cards in different orders. But I think you see, it's great to have facsimile decks. I'm very glad to have facsimile decks because I like to go to the source, but I am a card interpreter I'm a collector, obviously. I don't know how many decks I have, but I got a couple, but I also interpret, and I interpret for folks, I do a lot of online interpretations for people. I do remote readings, right? So people contact me and I do a reading for them and I send them the video. So it's important to me to have decks that people can easily see because, cards are laid on a table. And there's something about a deck that is very well articulated with color and line that makes it extremely valuable for a person like me who interprets cards for a living, right? Plus, it's just a joy. Even just the backs of the cards. Look at the backs. Right? Marco's backs, it's like even the back is alive, right? It's like, whoa, a jolt of energy just by the virtue of the back. Okay, now remember for the number 2 card, we don't have the female Pope in place, we have the Grand Duke. So even in Italy, there started to be tension regarding that issue. Probably if the female Pope was a reference to Pope Joan, I'm sure certain areas of Italy, especially in the north, would have been dealing with political stuff from the Pope. Like, get rid of that female Pope. She was nothing but trouble. So we have a Grand Duke, kind of a generic guy. These two are more similar than these. They're all very similar, but we see the scepter in the other hand. And thank goodness all the backs are different with these other ones because it kind of gets hard. So I think we have the Western Pope. The Western Emperor, I think is represented by the eagle. I should have done my homework before. Before I started the video, I apologize. But I think this is the Western with the eagle. The Western Emperor. Because, again, everything was political. We probably don't have to go through all the cards to make the point that I've tried to make. And here's the Eastern Emperor. With the star. I think the star, I think, is equated with the Eastern Emperor. So there we have it. So I think I've made my point about color. Marco is a master of color, there's no denying that this deck is vibrant and alive, and especially if you do readings, it's just uplifting, These are gorgeous, don't get me wrong. These are beautiful, and as I mentioned many times, it's great to have facsimile decks. I would be lost without facsimile decks. But if you're an interpreter and you enjoy reading the cards, and if you do it, especially if you do remote readings for people that you sent them, even if you do it live with them, and you're just like doing teleconferencing kind of thing, even if it's a live read and not just a video read, it's important that your clients can see the cards, right? So remember, the numbers are off. So rather than being 6, because we didn't have the female pope, 5 is the lover. Now, it may throw some of you, because the female pope is missing, but it's been decided or generally thought that the 18th card, which is the faith card, could be used to represent the energy of the female pope. So the number 18 card. Now I did a reading yesterday for you guys using this Minchiate, and the faith card popped up 3 times. So I think I used cards from these decks, these other decks. And I never interpreted it as the female pope. I interpreted it as faith. But if someone else, would have been inclined to interpret it as the female pope, that would be the card. Here we have temperance is 6. So temperance is nowhere near 14. So you can't say that the numbers being, mixed up because of the 2 through 5 cards. Temperance was 6. Now, the one thing with the Minchiate is you do have to know your Roman numerals, And if you don't know them, it's a good lesson to learn. That's how we learn, right? Is we just see things and... So here we see, again, we see these 2 cards, these 2 decks with the pillar or the column at a tilt. And here it's more stayed. Which one am I missing? I'm missing one. 1, 2. Oh, no, I'm not. And remember, the object was to, on the cards, was to convey the concept, right? And however, regional artists decided to convey the concept, say, for example, of justice, and here it's 8. I love that it's 8. That's how they conveyed the concept. Now here in these 2, we see the scales of justice in her left hand and the sword in her right, and here we have the opposite. They're so similar. I didn't remove this when I did when I showed the hermit, so I'm just going to put this aside. Okay, so notice that the Wheel of Fortune now is not 10. We'll see it here. It's labeled 9. So in these 2 decks, which are extremely similar, we don't see the numbers, but in Marco's and in Il Meneghello's, we see. So although this is called Solesio, I think this was called the Fiorentine. This is called Etruria, and I think this is the Fiorentine. Excuse me, I apologize, Etruria. So we see there's different, even aside from the earlier pattern I showed you, there still are variations, right? And they still might have called them the same names. I mean, these 2 are called Etruria, and they're both the same, right? They're both the same pattern. These are the truer together. And the Fiorentine is closer to Marco's Solesio-Genova. But there's still the concepts despite the style being a little bit different, they're all pretty similar. So here we have the Chariot, and I think it's number 10. Yeah, it's number 10. So the Wheel of... Now, when they don't number the cards, that frees the players to... Remember, it was a card game. That frees the players to agree before playing what the rules were. What, you know, they understood what number the Chariot would have been. For those, maybe they needed to be reminded, or, you know, the 10 was put on, or maybe, I don't think Margot added the numbers. I think they probably were on the cards, but I can't speak on that for truth. But maybe publishers might put the cards in order for us. But I think, if anything, I think that's probably not the case, because I think, if anything, modern day publishers would probably, if the numbers didn't jibe with what we're accustomed to, would have left the numbers off, because it would make it easier for modern day players. Okay, I didn't take this one out before, so I have to put that one away. So here we have the Hanged Man with the number 12 that we're accustomed to. And they're very similar. And in the Minchiate, it seems like they're all referencing betrayal. Now, Judas was not hung upside down by his foot, but he, you know, because he unalived himself. I hate to use that word, but I don't want to get dinged by YouTube, because I've already been dinged because, God forbid, there was a boob shown in one of my cards and somebody got uptight. But so I have to be very careful. But he did betray Christ, and this was the traditional method of taking care of the consequence for somebody for treason or betrayal. And so they did add the sacks of presumably gold to this. So although it's not traditionally the way Judas came to an end, I do think that this is a reference to that, the fact that the sacks of gold was a reference to his betrayal. And so it drives home the idea that this is a consequence for betrayal. Now, I have so many Minchiate videos in my playlist, which I will include down below. Here we have Death. And I have a few that I do readings on, although the one I did the other day is the best one, because I really had a grip. I had a handle on what I was doing. I think because this deck really speaks to me. At any rate, again, we see Death facing this, going in one direction, like the Knight of Batons, right? He's going in one direction, but he's distracted in another. And here, these two, Death is going in the direction he's facing, which is very interesting to me. And he is 13, so they kept the number 13. Here we have the Devil. Okay, again, the similarities between the first two are more similar, and then these two are more similar. But we do have wings that are not of virtue. He's not 15, he's 14. And in all, we have the snakes. We have, you know, he's got a belt of snakes, which is very interesting. And the hooven, or not hooven, they're like clawed toes, suggested in these two, but really spelled out in these two. With the pitchfork. And there's a little suggestion of fire here too. We don't see that here in these two. So this is already getting kind of long. If you're with me, thank you. Thank you for hanging out. And we're only at 24 and it goes to 40. So this is going to be a long one. If you want to pause and come back to it, I'd really appreciate it, rather than you just abandoning it. Now here we have what looks like the expulsion of Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden. Maybe that's how they understood this. And we still have the concept a little differently. We have a column here, like it's a structured kind of place. Here it's more like they're emerging from a tunnel. And I don't rightly know if that is Adam. That might just be Eve. She's the one who was blamed, right? So it might be, evil casting her out of the Garden of Eden. I don't know how it worked. That would be a little rabbit hole for you guys to go down on your own. I probably knew at some point. I don't remember everything anymore. I remember what I need to remember. Okay, so here we have hope. Okay, hope is praying. When you have hope, you pray, dear God, please allow this to happen, or whatever, dear universe, or whoever you pray to, right? So we have and in these we see the halo or the crown of virtue. When you see a scalloped halo, that means it's a virtue. Okay, so hope is considered a virtue, but it could be said maybe that they're praying to the King of Kings. I guess that's a possibility, right? They're not that dissimilar. But in these, we see the virtuous wreath or the virtuous crown or whatever. Here we have prudence. Prudence, for me, is the easiest one to recall because it's got a snake and it's got a mirror. And that's how I can remember it, because I did a blog on how they hanged Prudence, how the occultists believe that the hanged man might have been representing Prudence because they perceived the rope around the hanged man's foot as a snake, which appeared in Prudence. So if I think of it, I'll put that article down below as well. Again, the wreath indicating virtue. So in addition to the regular 78 cards, we have the additional virtues. We have the elements that they put in. And then we also have the signs of the zodiac. So that created an additional, and here we have faith, which, as I mentioned, if you are inclined to replace the female pope, you would use this card, if you use the Minchiate, to use the essence of the female pope. And in the reading I did the other day, which Faith appeared 3 times, I did not interpret her as the female pope, but if you'll recall, she fell right next to the moon card, right? So it could have been a double whammy of mystery and the moon card. I could have interpreted it that way. That's not how I received the message, but it would have been valid had you thought that. Again, with these two, we see the crown of virtue. Faith has a tablet or something that she's referencing. Could be the 10 Commandments. I don't know. But there's a reference, She has a spear in these, not in this. I don't, unless it's in her hand. No, I don't see anything in these hands. And the last would be charity. So here we have charity. Charity, could it be the bleeding heart of Jesus? I'm not sure. It's not even clear what this is in these two. But by this one, we see that something's on fire. And here, something's definitely on fire. Could it be the bleeding heart of Jesus? Is the bleeding heart of Jesus associated with charity? I don't know. That could be a rabbit hole for you guys to go down. I'll certainly look it up after I'm done. Oops. Also, if you've been with me for 30 minutes now, I have to assume that you find value in my videos. And if I don't ask enough, but I really would appreciate a thumbs up, a subscription, and anything you do to help YouTuber along. I would really appreciate that very much. So here we have number 20, and we have the element of fire. And we have a creature, right, that is associated with, oh, it's not the phoenix, but I think you understand the transformation. Well, look at, there is a transfer. No, he's just standing in the fire. He's just standing in the fire. I used to know, my memory, it's not on the tip of my tongue right now, so I apologize. But again, it's a rabbit hole for you to go down. So here we have the element of water. And as a Philadelphian, I would typically say water. I grew up in the suburbs of Philly. I lived in Philadelphia for, I don't know, 10 or 12 years, something like that. But I grew up outside of Philadelphia, and we clearly said water. I try to be correct and say water, but every now and then if I say water, that's a giveaway as to where I'm from. Now see here, we very cleverly have 21 in a banner, right? But here it's just on the side. But in all cases, we have a ship on the water. Here we have a flag, right? Flag of their land. Now, I've said this over and over and over and over, especially when I've looked at these older decks. And I know I'm the first to have said it. I can't find any sources, but I have a feeling, let me pull the Vachier. I have a feeling that when this got sent over to France, they were familiar with the Minchiate, especially if you look at these two, which are probably older, right? And we see something in the sky, animals here, water, maybe, and they're probably familiar with the fact that there's a crustacean and a few, right? There's a crustacean just shortly thereafter. So and then these two, well, actually they were probably more familiar with these two. These two were probably, and just because they're labeled like 1700s, remember the style and the fashion of these cards didn't change much, right? And so this could have been a pattern for a few hundred years. So just don't be thrown off by the date, right? The tradition of these cards probably didn't change a whole lot. So it's just a stone's throw away to imagine that this somehow became the moon card of TDM. Let me pull an early TDM. I even know that a few years ago in a video that Marco did with someone else, he indicated that Marilyn made this observation because I think it struck him too. I can't speak for Marco, but I do remember when he did a video with someone else, and he said, Marilyn made this observation, and it struck him as interesting, and I think it is, right? So here we have the Vachier, this one done by the wonderful Yves Renaud, who does more, usually the French decks. And don't we have so many of the same ingredients? We have two towers, we have creatures, we have some kind of water thing going on. Is it a bridge? Is it just the bank of I'm not sure, right? But we have something crawling up. We have something crawling up. Maybe it occurred to them. Maybe they saw one of these decks that wasn't as well articulated. Maybe they thought it was something crawling up the banks. I don't know. And then we have a mass in the center of the picture. I don't know, but it seems to me there's an awful lot of the same ingredients. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So I hope you don't mind that I go off on my tangents, but that's how I learn, and I think that's probably how a lot of people learn, Okay, so here we have the element of air. And I believe this is our last of the four elements. So we have birds flying, we have stars, we just have a landscape of the sky, pretty much. Here we have clouds, we have birds, and we have some type of little weasel. Oh, I didn't catch it in the first two. So we have some type of little weasel. Maybe he eats birds, I'm not sure. And I've done videos on Aesop's, the connection between Aesop's and the Minchiate, as like we see little creatures that are referenced in the Minchiate. That is one of at least one video I have on the Minchiate connects it with Aesop's. So if you want to go down that rabbit hole, all you have to do is check out my playlist. But there are references, there are moral references in these cards. And even the basic 78 tarot cards, there's moral references, right? So it's only a stone's throw away to believe that little old ladies, I'm convinced, little old Italian ladies were interpreting the cards. I mean, when I did research on the game of playing tarot or tarocchi or tarocchino, depending on the deck, or Minchiate, there was a tradition of after the game was over and whatever cards were left on the table, people would make up stories based on what the images, it was probably the triumph cards, see, it tick-tocked, based on the triumph cards, I think, that were left on the table. I don't know what cards they used. They could have been using any of them, I'm not sure, but they would make up stories based on that. And that is basically card interpretation. Okay, so here we have another probably Aesop's fable. We have like a porcupine and fox, for Libra. I presume this is Libra. And the ingredients are pretty much the same. We have a little sigil here. E for Etruria, I guess. Now, Virgo, maybe? I guess this might be Virgo. I don't think they're in any real order that we might... and notice they have wings. Okay, so I screwed up someplace. Hang on. Okay, I'm not sure what I did, but here we have, I think, Virgo. My twins are Virgo. So I have 2 children that are Virgo. And they all have wings and a feather. They're very similar. These 2 are nude. We do see a lot of partial nudity in tarot, if you're offended. Not the channel for you. And Scorpio. Even I get this one. So we have a crustacean, and maybe when they were reinterpreting the game in France, they remembered seeing that there was a crustacean at some point coming out of the water. And maybe they decided to incorporate it into the card that they thought was the moon. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how stuff happens, but when stuff migrates from one country to another, they're different cultures, right? They have different understanding of things. And maybe they weren't interested in having a 97, card deck, right? So maybe they just said, hey, I'm taking this from that and this from that, and I'm coming up with a new deck. I don't know how stuff works, but that's how it seems like it does. They weren't holding on to it as a sacred thing because after all, it wasn't Italy, it was France, right? They could do whatever they want when they when people take something from another culture, they usually modify it to suit their own. I think that's how things work, right? So here we have a scorpion with a duck. Okay, and I think this was Aries. I have a brother who's Aries. And so Aries is represented with a lamb and a ram and a mountain in the background. So all 4 are very similar. And Capricorn. My mother and my husband are both Capricorns. And of course, the last deck that I'm picking up is always Marco's. And moving forward, I will be using the Minchiate for readings. I'll include that in my repertoire. I hadn't been using the Minchiate regularly. I've done a handful of Minchiate interpretations on my channel, not too many, maybe 2 or 3 altogether, but I'm going to start doing it because I really have a handle on it using this deck. So here we have Sagittarius. No one in my family is Sagittarius. So we have the Archer as a centaur and a boar, I take it. And this is great because even if you don't know much about astrology, like I don't, I know basic stuff. I think Sagittarians are fun, outgoing kind of people, but we also have the direction of the arrow and whatever it's pointing to. You could use that. I'm not one who subscribes to astrology. I have nothing. I know I'm not, I think it's interesting. I mean, who doesn't like to learn about themselves? If somebody says something like, oh, you're Leo, well, this, that, this other, my ears perk up. I'm like, oh, yeah. Sometimes it has something to do with me. And sometimes I'm thinking I'm like the least Leo person I know. But I could be incorrect. Here we have Cancer. My sister's a Cancer. Boy, I'm outing every family member what they are. So they're all pretty much the same concept. We have some kind of stamp from Etruria, a card from Etruria. Pisces, again, oh, nuts. That's not going to be easy to fix. I'll have to go off camera and fix that. In this one, I must say, there is like a gradual transition in color, almost like a rainbow. Almost, that's pretty. So in this one's Marco's. So now you see, the fish, one of them spouting water. They were all familiar with each other, and we have a little duck in the water, right? Okay, I have to go fix this mess I made over here. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm not really sure what I did, but I think I've corrected it. So now we're at Aquarius. Now my father was an Aquarian. So here we go. And when the rains came, there was opportunity to nourish the land. So we have somebody who, it's not a woman. We have a man, he's got facial hair. But he's, tending to the land. He's nourishing the ground. With number 32. And we see flowers growing. I don't know if they were crops here in these pictures, but here they look like flowers to delight our spirits. And we have Leo, which is what I am, represented by A. And notice we have in the Fiorentine by Meneghello, we have the red background, the beginning of the red, which we don't see in the other 3 cards, the other 3 decks. But the line is very similar, same posture, kind of similar background. I apologize for the noise in the background. My husband just came home from someplace, and he's probably annoyed that I'm not stopping what I'm doing to help him. And sometimes he's like a kid and he makes a lot of noise just to let me know he's here. I'm just ignoring him. Married life. Okay, so here we have Taurus, the bull, my first husband. Again, with this one, we have the red background. And we see it in this one as well. But very similar, right? We even have the mountains that are the same. And Gemini. My eldest son is a Gemini. Here we have the red or the bright orange background, which we don't see in the other 3, but we have the red cloak. So my Gemini son had twins for siblings, which has always been interesting to me. Boy, girl. Here we have 2 girls. Here we have 2 boys, so there's a difference, right? But my twins are boy, girl. Not that anybody cares. And now we go to the celestial cards. So there's a jump. Let's see. When we go into, after we have the virtues, right? We have the virtues, then we have the elements, the elemental cards. Then we go into the signs of the astrology. So what was before the virtues? Was it the moon card? It was death. Okay, so we had death and then we had the tower, right? So we had death, the devil, and then the tower. And then we go right in, the tower moment of being removed, right? And we see, fire from above. So that could be where the fire came from hitting the tower. I don't, who knows? So then we have, it was the concept, remember? It was the concept of destruction, or the concept of, shaking up somebody's world, right? So we have the tower moment, then we go into the virtues, then we go into the elements, then we go into the signs of the zodiac, and then we continue with the star. Very similar. And here we have the red sky, which we see in this card as well. Other than the difference in the color of the sky, the ingredients are the same. He's got an ermine cloak. He's got his chalice. His horse is pretty much the same. Gesture, head, and everything. At a gallop. Then we have the moon. With the red sky here, and also in Marco's. I had to rearrange how I had the cards because I was starting to get really confused and things were getting messed up. So we have the moon looking down. It's perhaps some type of celestial event going on. We see it here as well. And we have an astronomer, or in those days it would have been an astrologer, because the astrologers were the astronomers with his calipers or whatever those tools are. Time. The sun, a couple in a garden. The fella's getting kind of frisky. In these two, we see the bright orange. The gentleman making advances, the woman going, oh. But maybe not. But the sun is the concept. Figures prominently in the sky. We know that that's the sun card. The couple, even throughout the Marseille decks, we have a pair of people in a garden or a walled garden. Gets changed in translation. Now here we have the world card coming before the angel card. And I've addressed that issue many times. In the Fiorentine by Il Meneghello, it's continued to be read. This card is not, but we'll see. This is the only card without the red background compared to the Fiorentine. And I love this world card, because I don't go for I don't know, the figure in the mandala with I don't know, it bugs me. But I do like this. And why did the world card come? If you've seen enough of my videos, you know why. I should probably not tell you and make you go back and watch some of my other videos, but I'll be kind. And some of you probably, you'll probably already know, or you've watched my videos, and so you learned that way. It was the 20th card rather than the 21st, because this was the manifestation of what you accomplished on Earth. So this was the height of what you could accomplish. Or if in interpretation, if you want to know if something will come to pass, if you got this card, it would be very fortuitous, right? And then the angel card, or the trumpet, or whatever they called it, now we know it as judgment, is when you have to account for your life. After your earthly life, right? After you've accomplished this on earth, then you have to account for your life. The angel comes for you, and you have to account for your earthly life. So this is the 40th card, and now we're into the pips, which I'll stop here, and I will continue with the pips in another video. Hope you enjoyed this one. You know what, I probably won't do a pips because the pips aren't going to be all that different, I don't think. And I think you've got the gist for the color, right? You get the gist for the other ones that were more facsimile decks. They're more dusty, muted colors, right? In keeping with it being an older deck. And I think you understood that, you know, there's an electricity, there's an electric value. Just look at the backs of Marco's Minchiate. So I think you got the idea. So I don't think I'm going to do a pip comparison. Unless you ask me to do it, I'm not going to do it. Or if somebody wants me to do it and only one person asks me to do it, I'll just include it in a descriptive area of this one eventually or something like that. So down below, look for my Minchiate playlist. And I think I did an article on prudence. So I might put that down there below. Until next time, friends, peace, stay well, be kind, and be brave.